Olympia always thought the worst betrayal was hearing her stepmother call her fat, worthless, and unlovable. But that was before the night she was sold to a paralyzed stranger. What she didn't know was that this man, quiet, distant, watching her with eyes full of secrets, was connected to her past in a way that would shatter everything she believed about her father's death. And when she finally learns who he really is, her entire world flips. This story begins with pain, betrayal, and a girl who thought she wasn't worth loving. Olympia had spent years being body shamed and broken down by the one person who should have protected her, her stepmother, Loretta. 6 months after her father's death, drowning in debts and resentment, Loretta made a choice that changed everything. She sold Olympia to a wealthy, paralyzed stranger named Andrew Hill. But what Loretta didn't know, and what Olympia was about to discover, it was that Andrew wasn't a stranger at all. He was holding a truth so powerful it would rewrite her past, reshape her future, and force her to confront the meaning of love, loyalty, and destiny. Hi, my fellow story lovers. If you're ready to hear the full story, make sure you click subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because tomorrow I'm dropping another story just as emotional as this one. You don't want to miss it. Olympia Coleman stood at the bedroom window, fingers curled tightly around the faded curtain. The house was too quiet. It had been that way ever since her father died 6 months ago. Silence hanging in the air like dust that refused to settle. Loretta's footsteps echoed sharply down the hall, each one carrying tension that made Olympia's stomach knot. "Get dressed," Loretta barked from the doorway, not bothering to knock. For once. Olympia turned slowly. Loretta's eyes swept over her with the same disdain she used on dirty dishes or overdue bills. "That red dress," Loretta added, folding her arms. "It's the only thing that hides all of this." Her hand gestured vaguely, cruelly, at Olympia's body. Olympia swallowed the lump in her throat. She had heard it all before. Too big, too slow, too much. But somehow it hurt more today. "What's happening?" Olympia asked quietly. Loretta's lips tightened. "What's happening is that a man is coming today, a man who is willing to pay. You'll go work for him. You'll be useful for once." Shock froze Olympia in place. "You're selling me?" Loretta didn't flinch. "Don't make it dramatic. You'll live in a nice house, probably nicer than this one. Just do what he says and don't embarrass yourself." Olympia felt the floor tilt under her feet. She had known Loretta resented her size, her presence, the memories of her father she carried, but she never imagined it would come to this. "Why me?" Olympia whispered. Loretta's sigh was sharp. "Because no one else would take you." A small ache bloomed in Olympia's chest. She looked away so Loretta wouldn't see the tears gathering in her eyes. "Get ready," Loretta said, already turning to leave. "And try not to look pitiful." When the door finally shut, Olympia sank onto the edge of the bed. The red dress hung in the closet like a warning. She touched the fabric with shaking hands. It had been her father's favorite, not because it was fancy, but because he said the color made her brown skin glow. "Beautiful, my bright girl." Today, the dress felt like a costume for her own humiliation. A black sedan rolled up the driveway exactly 20 minutes later. Olympia walked to the car with stiff legs, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Loretta followed behind, arms folded tightly, just like in the thumbnail, watching everything with cold detachment. A driver stepped out and opened the back door. Inside sat a blond man in a wheelchair, dressed in a black suit with an open white shirt. He looked up at Olympia with eyes that were unexpectedly warm. "Miss Coleman?" he asked softly. Olympia nodded, her voice caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. "I'm Andrew Hill," he said. "You're safe with me." "Safe?" The word felt foreign. Loretta snorted behind them, irritation thick in her voice. "Well, she's your problem now." A flicker of anger crossed Andrew's face, quickly replaced by something gentler when he looked back at Olympia. "You have nothing to fear," he repeated. Olympia forced herself into the seat beside him. As the door closed, she caught one last glimpse of Loretta standing on the porch, arms folded, face blank. No hug, no apology, not even a goodbye. The car pulled away from the only home she had ever known. Olympia pressed her trembling hands between her knees and stared at the blur of passing trees, trying not to cry. Andrew remained quiet beside her, giving her space, even though she didn't understand why. As the mansion appeared in the distance, she realized her life had just split cleanly in two. The life before betrayal, and whatever waited for her now.
The drive to Andrew Hill's mansion felt longer than it was. Olympia kept her eyes fixed on the window, watching unfamiliar streets and large homes slip past. Her thoughts were too loud. Loretta's insults, the humiliation of being handed over, the tightening knot of fear in her stomach. Andrew didn't speak during the ride. He didn't stare at her or make her uncomfortable. He simply sat there, hands resting calmly on the wheels of his chair, breathing steadily. His silence didn't feel cold. It felt intentional, like he was giving her space. When the car stopped, Olympia stepped out cautiously. Andrew's mansion rose before her like something from a magazine. Quiet, elegant, shaded by tall trees. But instead of feeling impressed, Olympia felt smaller, more out of place, more aware of her body and the red dress Loretta forced on her. The driver helped Andrew out and onto the smooth stone pathway. Olympia expected Andrew to wheel himself ahead and leave her trailing behind. Instead, he looked back at her. "Take your time," he said gently. "You don't have to rush." She blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had spoken to her like that in months. Inside, the mansion was nothing like she imagined. It wasn't grand or intimidating. It was quiet, soft. The halls were lined with paintings, beautiful ones, and shelves of brushes, unfinished canvases, and scattered sketches. Light spilled through tall windows, falling across hardwood floors and warm-colored rugs. It didn't look like a house meant for showing off. It looked like a home for someone who had been lonely for a long time. Andrew wheeled ahead slowly, giving her time to absorb everything. "I know this is overwhelming," he said, leading her through the foyer. "You're safe here, Olympia. No one is going to hurt you or demand anything from you." Her chest tightened. She didn't understand why hearing her name and his voice felt different, gentler. Andrew stopped beside a staircase that spiraled up, sunlight painting patterns on the wall. "Your room is upstairs," he explained. "It's yours. Not borrowed, not shared, not temporary." Olympia's brows pulled together. "My room?" "Yes," he said simply. "Privacy matters. And comfort." Loretta never believed in privacy. If Olympia closed her door for too long, Loretta would bang on it and accuse her of being a lazy child. Now a stranger, one she had been sold to, was telling her the opposite. Andrew nodded towards a woman standing near the hallway. She looked to be in her 50s, wearing a crisp uniform and a kind expression. "This is Marcy," Andrew said. "She helps me around the house. She'll show you where everything is." Marcy smiled at Olympia. "It's lovely to meet you, dear. Come, I'll show you where your space is." Olympia hesitated. What do you want me to do first? I mean, cleaning? Cooking? There must be tasks." Andrew shook his head. "Nothing today. You just arrived. You need rest." "Rest." Another foreign word. And you don't have to do anything you don't want to, he added. Olympia stared, confused. But Loretta said, he lifted a hand gently. Whatever she said, forget it. I won't force you into anything. You can help around the house if you choose to do so, but not because you owe me. Her throat tightened painfully. She didn't know what to say. Nothing about this felt real. Marcy gently rested her arm on Olympia's arm. Let's get you settled, sweetheart. As Olympia followed her up the stairs, she glanced back at Andrew. He was looking around the hallway as if checking for anything that might cause her discomfort. His movements were slow, but dignified, graceful despite the chair beneath him. And for the first time that day, Olympia felt something other than fear. She felt confused. Why would a man like him, a wealthy man, a gentleman, treat her with kindness? Why didn't he look at her with disgust Loretta always warned her about? Why wasn't he demanding, cruel, or impatient? Why was he different? Olympia didn't know the answer yet. She only knew that nothing about him made sense, and that scared her more than anything. Olympia woke the next morning expecting the usual heaviness, the dread of facing Loretta's sharp comments, the chores, the silent house. But for the first time in months, there was no shouting, no banging on her door, no demand to move faster or make herself useful. Only sunlight spilling across the soft rug in her new room. She lay there for a moment, letting the quiet settle over her like a warm blanket. It felt strange, foreign, almost fragile. Downstairs, she found Marcy preparing breakfast. The kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of freshly baked bread and something sweet she couldn't quite place. "Morning, dear," Marcy said, smiling. "Andrew's in the garden if you'd like to step outside." Olympia hesitated. Does he need something? "He just likes company," Marcy said gently, "but only if you want to." Her first instinct was to retreat. She wasn't used to choosing anything for herself, but something, maybe curiosity, pulled her toward the patio door. She stepped outside. Andrew sat beneath a trellis of blooming jasmine, a blanket over his legs, a sketchbook resting on his lap. The morning light caught in his blonde hair, softening his features. His profile looked peaceful, thoughtful, almost elegant. The garden behind him was beautiful, lush, colorful, alive. Olympia blinked, stunned by how calm it made her feel. Andrew looked up at her, offering a small smile that warmed his eyes. "Good morning." Her breath snagged for the smallest moment. "Morning." "I hope the room was comfortable," he said. "We can change anything you don't like." She shook her head quickly. "No, it's perfect. Better than anything I've ever had." Their eyes held a little longer than necessary. Andrew looked away first, almost shyly, and closed his sketchbook.
"Do you like gardens?" he asked. "I used to help my dad with ours," she murmured. "Before everything?" His expression softened in a way that made her chest ache. "Would you like to help me here? Only if it brings you peace." Peace. Another word she'd forgotten. She stepped toward the flower beds. "What do I do?" He guided her gently, never raising his voice, never correcting harshly. When her hands trembled pulling weeds, he simply leaned forward slightly, voice low and calm. "You're doing well. The flowers will thank you." Something in his tone, warm but steady, rested softly against the edges of her fear. After tending the garden, he invited her inside. "If you're not too tired, would you like to see the art studio?" She nodded, curiosity tugging her steps again, but something else too, a quiet pull toward him she didn't understand. The art studio was breathtaking, sunlight pouring through tall glass walls,
canvases leaning everywhere, jars of brushes and pencils arranged neatly. It felt like stepping into a world where time didn't exist. Andrew wheeled over to a blank canvas. "This is where I work. I thought maybe you could paint with me." Her pulse fluttered. I don't know how." "Everyone knows how," he said softly. "They just forget." He handed her a brush, guiding her fingers through a gentle stroke. His hand brushed hers, warm, steady. The touch was brief, innocent, but Olympia felt something flicker low in her stomach. "There," he murmured. "See? Not hard at all." Olympia felt something loosen inside her, a memory of her father guiding her early drawings, and standing beside Andrew, she felt safe, close, seen. She dipped the brush in soft blue and dragged it across the canvas. Her heartbeat slowed, her breathing steadied. For a moment, the world didn't hurt. Later, during lunch, she helped Andrew plate his food. She expected irritation, maybe impatience. Loretta always snapped if Olympia moved too slowly, but Andrew waited, patiently, watching her, listening when she spoke, creating space for her to breathe. "You don't mind?" she asked quietly. "Mind?" Andrew shook his head. "Olympia, I'm grateful." The word struck her with surprising force. Grateful. For her? As the days passed, a rhythm wrapped gently around them. Mornings in the garden, hands brushing soil, sometimes brushing each other. Afternoons painting beside him, their shoulders occasionally nudging, soft laughter echoing in the studio. Quiet meals where Andrew asked about her dreams, not her past. Small conversations about life, memories, the color of the sky that day. And slowly, carefully, a soft thread of chemistry wove itself between them. He looked at her, not with pity, not with judgment, but with something deep and unspoken. Something she tried not to name. Something she tried not to want. Little by little, Olympia began to feel something terrifying. Safety and connection. But trauma whispered, "It won't last. People change. Kindness is temporary." She didn't know whether to trust the peace or brace for it to vanish. All she knew was that Andrew Hill saw her, really saw her. Her softness, her talent, her quiet intelligence. Not her body, not her weight, not the insults Loretta carved into her. And for the first time in a long time, Olympia allowed herself to hope. Just a little. Rain had been threatening the sky all afternoon, gathering in thick gray clouds above the mansion. Olympia didn't mind storms. She used to sit with her father on the porch and watch the lightning roll across the horizon. But tonight, the air felt heavy in a different way, like something was shifting inside her life again, and she didn't know why. She had just finished cleaning the brushes in the art studio when she heard voices drifting from Andrew's office. She rarely went near that part of the house. It felt too private, too personal. Still, the door was slightly open, and Andrew's voice carried into the hallway, gentle but tense. "Yes," Andrew said, "I transferred the money. Loretta accepted the full amount." A pause. She practically shoved Olympia out of the car. Olympia froze. The lawyer's voice responded, muffled through the phone speaker. "So the arrangement is complete?" "Yes," Andrew said softly. "I paid what she asked. I had to get Olympia out of that house. You heard how she spoke to her. Paid. Arrangement. Money." The words slammed into Olympia like blows. Her chest tightened. Her breath hitched. For a moment she couldn't move. The hallway blurred. Loretta's voice echoed in her head. "You're only worth anything when someone pays for you. No one will ever want you unless they're desperate. Fat girls like you should be grateful anyone is willing to take you." Olympia's legs shook. She stumbled back from the doorway, heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear over it. "He paid for me. So it was true. Loretta sold me, and he bought me. Her throat clenched, nausea rising like a wave. She backed into the wall, the storm rumbling outside as if reacting to her spiraling thoughts.
How stupid had she been? To believe a rich man could see her as anything more than a convenience? A transaction? Her mind twisted Andrew's kindness into unfamiliar shapes. The room he gave her? Payment. The meals? Payment. The art lessons? A distraction. The gentle tone? A mask. Tears welled up, slipping down her cheeks before she could wipe them away. "I'm worthless," she whispered to herself. "Loretta was right. I'm nothing." Andrew continued speaking, not knowing she was outside. "I just want her safe," he said quietly. "She deserved better than the way that woman treated her." But Olympia didn't hear the softness, only the confirmation that he had paid for her. She stepped away from the door, heart hammering, thoughts spiraling darkly. Her trauma, her years of humiliation, all the insults Loretta threw at her, they wrapped around her like chains. She grabbed her bag from the bedroom, stuffing in what little she owned, clothes, a sketchbook, a few pencils. Her hands shook so much she dropped things twice. She kept wiping tears with the back of her sleeve, trying to steady her breathing, but the panic wouldn't let go. She didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, didn't allow herself to think. She just ran. The moment she stepped outside, the heavens opened. Rain poured in sheets, soaking her instantly. She clutched her bag to her chest and ran down the long driveway, feet slipping in the mud, hair sticking to her cheeks. Lightning split the sky. Wind tore at her dress, but she didn't care. All she knew was that she had to get away. Away from Andrew's mansion. Away from the kindness she now believed was fake. Away from the reminder that she was something bought and paid for. The storm swallowed her as she ran into the night, sobbing, blinded by grief and betrayal she didn't understand. She had escaped Loretta, and now, trembling in the rain, she believed she had escaped one owner, only to fall into the hands of another. What would you have done in Olympia's place? Type it in the comments. The storm had weakened by the time Olympia's legs gave out. She didn't know how long she had been running, only that the cold had soaked deep into her bones and the weight of her bag felt heavier with every step. Her feet splashed through puddles along a narrow rural road until she finally saw a faint glow in the distance. A chapel. Its old stone walls rose gently against the night sky, the stained glass windows glowing warm gold from the light within. She staggered toward it, guided more by instinct than thought. When she reached the wooden doors, she pressed a trembling hand against them. They creaked open. A woman in a soft gray habit hurried towards her, eyes widening with concern. "Oh my goodness! Child, what happened to you?" Olympia collapsed into her arms before she could answer. The next thing she remembered was waking up beneath a thick blanket in a simple but comfortable room. The air smelled of lavender and old books. Her clothes had been dried. Her bag sat neatly by the bed. A knock sounded on the door. "Come in," Olympia croaked. A nun with warm brown skin and gentle eyes entered. "I'm Sister Miriam. If you're feeling well enough, I'd like you to join us in the dining hall." Olympia nodded, though her body felt heavy with exhaustion. Sister Miriam walked slowly beside her, matching her pace. "You're safe here," she said. "No one will ask questions you aren't ready to answer." In the dining hall, several sisters greeted her with soft smiles. The warmth in the room was unlike anything Olympia had felt in a long time. They offered her tea, soup, and a seat near the fire. For the first time in months, she didn't feel judged. Later that evening,
Sister Miriam sat with her in a small room lined with shelves of religious texts and children's drawings. "You've been through something painful," the nun said softly. "But pain doesn't decide who you are. It's only part of your story." Something inside Olympia cracked. Tears slid down her cheeks, quiet, steady, unstoppable. Sister Miriam didn't rush her. She simply held her hand until the sobs faded. In the days that followed, the convent folded Olympia into their routines gently. Morning prayer, afternoon chores, evening reflection, and long conversations that helped her begin to untangle the lies she had carried for years. They arranged for her to see a therapist who visited twice a week. The sessions were uncomfortable at first, but slowly Olympia began speaking truths she had never allowed herself to say out loud, about Loretta's body shaming, her loneliness, her fear of being unwanted. One afternoon, Sister Miriam noticed Olympia admiring the children's drawings on the wall. "You have an artist's eye," she said. "Would you like to help with the children's art sessions?" Olympia hesitated. "You think I can?" "I think you were made for it." And so, Olympia began teaching art to the children who visited the convent's small school. She guided their hands, encouraged their imagination, and rediscovered her own in the process. The same joy she once felt painting beside Andrew returned, softened, gentler, but still alive. She didn't know that every paintbrush, every canvas, every notebook the children used came from a quiet donation made in her name. Andrew had found the convent. Not to drag her back, not to force her return, but to make sure she had everything she needed to heal. He funded the school supplies, the garden repairs, and the art program she led, all anonymously. He told no one, not even the sisters knew his name. He only asked that Olympia be cared for. And though she didn't know it yet, every step she took toward rebuilding her life, Andrew was there in the background, making sure the ground beneath her was steady. Time moved differently at the convent. Days flowed gently one into another, marked not by fear or dread, but by quiet routines, warm laughter, and the soft hum of life continuing. In this sanctuary, Olympia began to bloom in ways she never thought possible. Her mornings started with sunlight warming her face and the distant sound of children playing in the courtyard. She rose early, tying her hair back the way Sister Miriam showed her, and stepped into the halls with a steadiness she hadn't felt since childhood. The first few weeks were about survival. The months that followed were about becoming. Olympia started helping with the children almost by accident. One day she noticed a little boy sitting alone in the playroom, scribbling angrily on a torn notebook. His name was Jonah, small for his age, quiet, and often retreating from the others. When Olympia approached, he snapped the notebook shut. "It's stupid." "Can I see?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then handed it over. Inside were frantic drawings, dark shapes, messy lines, a small figure in the corner with tears streaming down his face. Olympia sat beside him. "Your drawings aren't stupid, Jonah. They're honest." He blinked at her, surprised by the kindness in her voice. She told him how she used to draw when she felt scared or angry too. Something softened in him. For the first time, he asked if she could show him how to make the lines not look so crazy. That afternoon became the first of many art sessions. Soon, art class with Miss Olympia became the highlight of the children's day. She created programs, Colorful Gratitude, where kids painted things that made them feel safe, Stories and Shapes, helping them express emotions through abstract art, Garden Sketchers, afternoons spent outdoors capturing flowers and sunlight in charcoal, Hope Boards, where each child painted something they believed their future could hold. Her classroom,
Once an unused storage room turned into a kaleidoscope of color. Walls covered with drawings, tables stained with paint, shelves filled with brushes and watercolor palettes. And she belonged there, completely. The children helped her heal without even trying. A little girl named Ruby loved hugging her from behind and saying, "You smell like flowers." Those small arms around her made Olympia feel safe in a way she hadn't since her father passed. An older boy named Malik struggled with anger after losing his mother. When Olympia opened up gently about her grief, he didn't look away. "So, grown-ups get sad too," he whispered. That was the first time he allowed himself to cry in front of anyone. A shy girl named Amara once tugged on Olympia's dress during class and said, "Miss Olympia, you look like a queen in red." It was the first sincere compliment Olympia had received about her body in years. She almost cried right there in the middle of the room. Each child, in their small, innocent way, gave back pieces of her heart she thought were gone forever. Sister Miriam watched her with quiet pride. "You're changing them," she said one afternoon. Olympia smiled as she wiped paint from the tables. "They're changing me too." She didn't just teach art, she taught the children to breathe, to feel, to be seen. And in doing so, she learned to see herself with kindness. What Olympia never knew was how much support she had behind her. Every new paintbrush, every canvas, every box of crayons, every easel that magically appeared, Andrew funded it, quietly, consistently, without expecting anything in return. He never signed his name, never asked for acknowledgement, never let the sisters reveal the source. He simply sent what Olympia needed to build the world she was creating. He watched her transformation from afar, through photos the sisters posted online, through weekly updates from the convent administrator, through the blooming garden she tended, which he paid to have expanded so she would have more space. While Olympia grew stronger emotionally, Andrew grew stronger physically. He spent hours each day in therapy, stimulating muscles that hadn't moved in years, practicing standing for seconds at a time, strengthening his arms and core, learning balance with a cane. Some days he collapsed from exhaustion. Some days he cursed the pain. Some days he nearly gave up. But every time he felt himself falter, he remembered the girl who had painted beside him with shaking hands and gentle laughter. The girl who looked at him without fear. The girl who fled believing she had been bought, but who deserved to know she was loved. "I have to stand," he told his therapist, for her father's memory, for the promise I made." And so he pushed, harder than he had ever had in his life. At the convent, Olympia continued to blossom into the woman she was always meant to become. Emotionally stronger, her voice clearer, confident, walking with her shoulders relaxed, nurturing, a natural guide for the children, purposeful, finding meaning in each day, respected, admired by the sisters and the kids, beautiful in her spirit, glowing from the inside outward. She no longer flinched when someone raised their voice, no longer doubted whether she deserved space, no longer saw her worth through Loretta's bitter eyes.
Olympia had shed the girl who walked into the storm. A new woman had emerged, and destiny, quiet, patient, but unstoppable, was gently guiding her back toward the man who never stopped believing in her potential. The gala hall glowed with warm golden lights, the kind that softened every surface and made the world feel a little more magical. Olympia stood near the stage entrance, smoothing the skirt of her red dress. The red dress, but now redesigned, modern, elegant. It fit her perfectly, framing her curves with a confidence she finally owned. She wasn't a girl Loretta had dragged to Andrew Hill's doorstep. She wasn't the girl who'd run through a storm convinced she'd been bought. She wasn't even the girl who arrived at the convent trembling and lost. Tonight, Olympia stood tall, radiant, composed, purposeful. Sister Miriam squeezed her hand before she stepped on stage. "Speak from your heart. You survived darkness. Now let your light help someone else." Olympia nodded and walked to the podium. The crowd fell silent. She spoke about emotional abuse, about losing her father, about the sting of body shaming, about the power of being seen, really seen, by people who look beyond your scars. She talked about the children she worked with, the healing she found in helping others heal. Her voice wavered once or twice, but she never lost her composure. The audience watched her with admiration, some with tears in their eyes. And just as she said the words, "Healing is not about forgetting. It's about remembering who you truly are," a soft murmur rippled through the back of the hall. Someone had just entered. Olympia sensed it before she saw it, a shift in the air, the pull of a presence she hadn't felt since the night she ran into the storm. She turned slightly. Her breath caught. Andrew Hill stood in the back of the hall, not sitting in his wheelchair, not watching quietly from a distance. He was standing, leaning on a polished black cane, his posture a little shaky but undeniably upright. His blonde hair caught the light, his eyes fixed on her with an emotion she had never seen so clearly before. Shock rippled through her chest, followed by a tight, aching warmth. Andrew. Standing. Her hand clutched the edge of the podium as her heart hammered. He didn't move toward her. He didn't interrupt. He simply stood there, proud, steady, waiting. She took a shaky breath and finished her speech. The audience erupted in applause, but all Olympia could see was him. When she stepped down from the stage, several sisters approached her, whispering urgently. "Did you know?" one asked. "Know what?" Olympia whispered back, dazed. "That man," the sister nodded toward Andrew. "He's been funding everything." Olympia blinked. "Everything?" "Yes, your art programs, the supplies, the new renovations, the outreach projects, all the anonymous donations. Him." "He never wanted credit," another added softly. "He only asked that you were supported." Olympia's knees nearly buckled. All this time.
Every brush, every notebook, every upgrade the convent received. It had been Andrew. He didn't chase her. He didn't force her return. He just helped her become the woman she was always meant to be. Tears blurred her vision as she walked toward him slowly at first, then faster, then running. Andrew's eyes widened slightly, and he braced himself on the cane just a little harder. When she reached him, Olympia didn't hold back. She threw her arms around him, and he caught her with one steady arm, staggering only a little. The reunion wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, soft, raw. He exhaled shakily against her hair. "Olympia." She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "You stood," she whispered. "I had to, for you." Her tears fell freely now. "Why did you do all of it? The church, the supplies, everything?" Andrew's voice was almost a whisper. "Because I wanted to see you rise, Olympia, even if I never stood beside you again." She pressed her forehead against his chest, overwhelmed by truth, gratitude, and something deeper she hadn't dared to name until now. For the first time in months, she felt at home. And this time, she didn't run away. Olympia stood outside the familiar blue door, her palms damp despite the cool air brushing her skin. She hadn't been here in months,
The last time she walked away from this doorstep, it was in the pouring rain with nothing but a bag on her shoulder and a heart split open by betrayal. Today, she stood straighter. Her dress fit her with confidence. Her skin glowed with health and purpose. Her chest rose with steady breaths that came from weeks of healing and growth. Still, her fingers trembled as she lifted her hand to knock. For a moment, no one came. Just as she turned to leave, the door cracked open. Loretta's face appeared, but she didn't open the door fully. Her eyes widened, her breath catching. Olympia? Olympia swallowed. Hi, Loretta. Loretta's gaze darted away, her jaw tightening in shame. She opened the door a little more, but not enough to invite Olympia inside. Up close, Olympia could see that Loretta had aged. Her posture sagged. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, and her once carefully styled hair was tied messily behind her head. She looked like someone carrying the weight of guilt, without the strength to set it down. "I didn't think you'd come," Loretta said quietly. "I didn't think I would either, but I needed to." Loretta's throat bobbed. She stepped back just enough for Olympia to enter. The living room was dim, cluttered with unopened mail, half-empty cups, and the kind of silence that came from living alone with regret. Olympia's eyes scanned the room, not in judgment, but with a heavy understanding of how grief and guilt had eroded this home. Loretta stayed near the wall, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "You look different." Olympia knew what she meant. Healthy, confident, loved, chosen, powerful in ways Loretta had never allowed herself to be. "I've changed," Olympia said softly, "but I didn't come to show that off. I came because I needed answers." Loretta's shoulders shook. She nodded slowly, bracing herself. Olympia took a shaky breath. "Why did you sell me? Why did you hate me so much?" Loretta's face crumpled, a sound escaping her throat that was closer to a sob than a word. She pressed a hand to her mouth, steadying herself before speaking. "I didn't hate you," she whispered, her voice raw. "I hated myself." Olympia blinked. "What?" Loretta slid down into a chair, unable to stand under the weight anymore. Tears streaked her face freely now. "I was overwhelmed after your father died. I didn't know how to handle the debts, the house, my grief. I felt like I was drowning, and every time I saw you, how close you were to him, I was reminded of everything I lost." Olympia's chest tightened. Loretta continued, voice breaking. "I couldn't have children. For 8 years I tried. Every failed test was a wound. And you," her voice trembled, "you were everything I wasn't. Loved, wanted, chosen by him." Olympia's eyes filled, despite herself. "I took my bitterness out on you. Your weight. It was never about your body. It was the only thing I could attack that you couldn't defend. I was jealous, angry, lost. I'm so ashamed." Olympia couldn't speak. She pressed a hand against her chest to steady her breath. Loretta looked down at her hands. "I didn't know who that man was, the one who took you in. If I had known he was connected to the accident, that your father died saving him, I never would have." Her voice cracked again. "Would you have treated me differently?" Olympia asked quietly. Loretta bowed her head. "I would have treated you the way your father wanted me to, the way you deserved." The room went still. Olympia's heartbeat thudded with pain, anger, and something softer she didn't want to name. "I can't change what I did," Loretta whispered, "but I wake up every day wishing I had been better. I regret everything, Olympia. Everything." The words sank deep. For a long moment, neither woman moved. The air hummed with years of hurt. Finally, Olympia stepped closer. Her voice was steady but gentle. "I didn't come for revenge," she said. "I came for closure, for truth, for peace." Loretta wiped her tears. Do you hate me? Olympia shook her head. No, hating you would keep me trapped. Then she added, softly but firmly, I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. Loretta broke, really broke, crying harder than Olympia had ever seen her cry. The sound wasn't dramatic, it was hollow, grieving, full of years of unspoken guilt. Olympia didn't hug her. Not yet. But she stood beside her, close enough to show she no longer carried the weight of Loretta's words, close enough to show she was free. Would you have forgiven Loretta if this were your story? Share your thoughts. Your voice matters here, and if you have been hurt before, comment, healing starts with me. Olympia paused at the entrance of Andrew's mansion, her breath catching as she looked up at the tall windows glowing gently in the twilight. This place had once been the beginning of her fear, and then the beginning of her healing. Now she hoped it would be the beginning of something new. Marcy opened the door with a wide smile. Oh, sweetheart, he's been waiting for you. Olympia stepped inside. Everything felt familiar, the soft echo of the marble floor, the warmth of the lamps, the scent of jasmine drifting in through the back garden. But something else filled the house now. Hope, not heaviness. Anticipation, not silence. She found Andrew in the art studio, standing near one of the tall glass walls, leaning lightly on his cane. He turned slowly when she heard her footsteps. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His eyes softened the way they always had when he looked at her, gentle, careful, full of emotion he never forced on her. Olympia, he breathed, as though saying her name brought him peace. She moved closer, noticing the slight tremble in his hand. You're walking more, she whispered. His lips curved into a small smile. I've been practicing. For me? She asked softly. He hesitated only a moment. For us. Her heart tightened. Andrew motioned for her to sit, but she shook her head. No, I need the truth first. He swallowed, nodding. You deserve it. A quiet storm of memories flickered through his eyes. The night of the crash, the years of recovery, the weight of secrets he had carried. When your father died, Andrew began, voice low. I didn't know his name. I didn't know who he was. I only knew that a stranger had dragged me out of a burning car and saved my life. Olympia's breath trembled. She had imagined the accident 1,000 times, but never like this. Never with her father's hands pulling someone else to safety. I told him to leave me. He could barely stand, but he kept saying one thing, over and over, even as the flames grew. Olympia pressed a hand to her mouth. Andrew's voice faltered. He said, take care of my girl. He said he didn't care what happened to him, only you. A sob escaped her.
Andrew's eyes glistened, tears gathering. I tried to save him. I tried, but he had no strength left. He looked down at his cane, his voice raw. He gave everything he had to make sure I lived. Olympia closed the distance between them slowly, heart aching, soul trembling. I searched for you, Andrew said, for months. I didn't know your name. I didn't know where you lived. I just knew I had a promise to keep. And when I finally found you, the way Loretta treated you, his jaw tightened with pain. I couldn't walk away, not after what your father did for me, not after seeing how alone you were. Olympia's tears flowed freely now. He reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. But I need you to hear this clearly. She looked up. You were never bought, he whispered. You were a promise I've been waiting to keep. Now, beyond that promise, you are the woman I love, and I choose you, Olympia, every day. Her knees buckled. Andrew caught her as she collapsed into his arms, crying into his chest, crying the way someone cries when every wound finally finds healing. He held her tightly, his own tears falling into her hair. "I choose you too," Olympia whispered, "not because of a promise, but because of who you are." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in the kind of silence that only love can fill. In the weeks that followed, life unfolded beautifully. Olympia found peace, real, steady peace. Andrew walked short distances with his cane, each step stronger than the last. Loretta began her own healing, helped quietly by the sisters who refused to let her drown in shame. And Olympia and Andrew, two souls bound by tragedy, rebuilt by kindness, and united by love, built a life together with dignity, choice, respect, and destiny guiding every step. The girl who had been sold, the man who had been saved, the father whose last breath became a bridge. Their story came full circle.
If this story touched your heart, take a moment to subscribe. Share in the comments what part moved you the most. Your voice helps our community grow. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned. More powerful stories are coming.